Welcome to Keep Rolling and the full review of the Adapt Brutale. This is a handcrafted skate made by skaters for skaters, and I've been rolling on these for about 6 months now, giving a really good three-dimensional picture of how they perform across a range of different settings. But they come with a €400 price tag. Are they worth the money, or is your cash better invested in a more traditional hard boot? Keep watching to find out more, but first, let's play the intro. You're watching Keep Rolling, and today we're talking about the Adapt Brutale. But if we're just meeting for the first time, I'm Chris Chadwick, and this is Keep Rolling, an inline skating channel where I'm keeping wheels turning with aggressive and big wheel blading content. I'm making product reviews, skate vlogs, and discussion of all things blading. So if that sounds like something that interests you, be sure to hit subscribe. So let's dive right into it with an overview of the skate. So the Adapt Brutale is a handmade skate constructed of a carbon fibre and dialine shell, which is fully heat moldable. It features an integrated air mesh liner and a 6-point mounted sole plate system, which is symmetrical, so can be reversed when you've worn down the plate on one foot, potentially doubling the lifespan of the sole plates. Adapt say these plates are made from a material which slides faster and lasts longer than traditional ultra-high molecular weight plastic. The skate is secured to the foot via the waxed laces, the cuff Velcro strap, and the 45-degree strap. The cuff is quite high and rigid on this skate, but it has quite a deep V-cut at the back of the shell to help improve the flexibility. Now, there are two different shell materials offered on Adapt's aggressive skates. There's the Brutale, made from the stiffer, more responsive carbon fibre, and then there's the Rival, made from the more flexible and forgiving dialine. Now, the Brutale is offered off the shelf with a full black skin and white sole plate at the time of filming this video. But there's also an option for a Brutale with a full custom colourway, where you have complete control over the colour scheme, and also a choice between the carbon fibre and the dialine shell. I went for the dialine for a bit of added flexibility, and I've gone for it in this black and green colourway, which I think is looking really fresh. So in terms of my first impressions, when the skate first arrived and I was holding it in my hand, you really get a sense of a really high quality, well-made product that's used really high-end materials. It looks and it feels quality, and subjectively speaking, you just get the sense that this has been designed and put together by someone with a real passion for quality inline skates. I really like the way that it looks aesthetically, with the sort of overlaid panels of nubuck and the peak of the dialine shell that you can see through the skin there. So in terms of my first impressions, I was really happy with the skate when it first arrived. When I first put the skates on and went for a roll around, one of the first things that struck me was the lightness of the skate. It left me kind of feeling much more kind of nimble and accurate with my foot placement on grinds. And having come from a kind of more cumbersome, heavy plastic shell, this was a really welcome sensation. One of the things I felt less enthused by was the quite significant overlap of the negative sole plate kind of over the side of the boot. It kind of felt a bit disconcerting at first. I was concerned that I was going to catch it together. This did happen a couple of times. It didn't kind of cause me to fall, but certainly was quite unsettling. I could shave the side of the sole plate down if it continued to be a problem, but then I would lose the option to swap the sole plates when I've worn it down on my dominant foot. It doesn't seem to subsequently be a huge issue, so I've left it as it is for the time being. Another initial thing I noticed when I started jumping off obstacles following a grind was that the shock kind of through my heels and legs felt quite harsh in comparison to the SLs which I was on before. They did have a much chunkier shock absorber. I mean, I don't do many gaps, but I think if I did, I would need to probably upgrade the shock absorber that comes in the skate. It's glued into the base of the boot and it's probably only about 1 inch thick. So that's something to consider if you are purchasing the skates. I did get used to it as time went on, and I think you kind of adapt the way you land, kind of use your knees a little bit more, but just something to bear in mind in terms of the shock absorber on the skate. But despite these minor issues, overall this skate feels great on the roll. If you are getting value from this review so far, I'd be grateful if you could apply some moderate pressure to the like button, or alternatively you could smash it if that's more your kind of thing. So let's talk about the liner, shell and cuff now. So I always think the mark of a good liner is one that you don't particularly notice while you're skating. It suggests that it's comfortable and not causing you any problems, and this was certainly the case here. The air mesh that the liner is constructed from, it felt strong, breathable and comfortable, and even during long sessions in the height of summer, the kind of internal boot never became noticeably damp, which I've heard can be a problem with more modern liners made from quite dense materials, such as the Intuitions. There are no signs of any wear within the liner after the 6 months use that I've had. The material, it feels like it would be really hard wearing, and I'd be quite surprised if any significant rips or tears did appear within the liner during the lifetime of the skate. But the liner itself is not the only reason why the skate is really comfortable. When I first reached out to Adapt about a custom order, they were able to offer making the shell wider for me than the standard model. I've got quite exceptionally wide feet, so can find it quite difficult to find skates that fit comfortably. But the wider shell that they've done for me on here has been an absolute revolution in terms of my comfort, and it's amazing to be able to skate without significant pain down the sides of my feet. So this is exceptional customer service. I don't think you can get anywhere else. So a massive shout out to Adapt for fulfilling this order for me. So in terms of the flex on the skate, that definitely takes some getting used to, and it's quite unlike anything I've experienced before. Whereas on a traditional hard boot, quite a lot of the flex kind of comes from the join in the cuff area and that kind of movement between the cuff and the shell. Really on this, it's pretty much kind of rigid, one piece section. And yeah, like I say, it does take some getting used to. But instead of kind of flexing, from the cuff, the top of the boot kind of tapers outwards around the top of the ankle, which allows that upper aspect of your ankle to kind of move laterally and medially, kind of contributing to the flex along with that V-cut at the back there. It felt a little bit disconcerting and a little bit unstable at first, particularly when landing gaps or on the approach to tricks like alley-oop topsides, where you kind of start to naturally flex your ankle a little bit kind of on the approach to the grind. But as I got used to the skates, I've grown to really like the way that this skate feels and the way that it sort of flexes and how the V-cut feels. I haven't had any problems kind of getting boned over on top sides. And once I'd adapted to the skate, that sort of initial sensation of instability was short-lived. So let's talk about the lacing, buckles and skin now. So one area that I did experience some slight frustration was that I found that throughout the session, the laces and the Velcro cuff kind of began to loosen, particularly on my dominant foot, where they're under, an increased strain. I found the workaround for this was just to divide the laces into kind of an upper ankle and a toe section, and that just helps to maintain the tension kind of within the laces and reduce the strain on the buckles, sort of solving that problem for me. So after solving that minor issue, the foot now feels really nice and snug and secure, and the heel feels really well locked in at the back of the skate. Again, another minor frustration was I found that the stitching, let me just get that in focus, the stitching sort of around the toe area sort of started to become a little bit loose after a few falls. I mean, it's just it's an aesthetic thing. But I feel like it could do with an additional layer of reinforcement around the toe. I'm not expecting that a skin of the skate to last as well as a plastic hard boot, but I would expect it to stand up to a little bit more abuse, and wouldn't expect it to kind of start to kind of unpick after a few months skating on there. So I was a little bit disappointed with that. I could fix it. I guess I could pay someone to stitch it back up, or could put a bit of shoe glue on there. But again, just a little bit disappointed that it didn't stand up to more abuse. So let's talk about the sole plate and backslide plate on the skate now. So on grinds, the sole plate performs really well. It slides really fast, which I think is helped by these speed dimples that are kind of cut quite broad and quite deep into the base of the sole plate. So yeah, it's sliding really well, locks in nicely, but one thing to bear in mind when you do first get the skates is that the edge of the plate is kind of incredibly sharp, as you can still see on the negative sole space there. That does mean that cess slides are quite tricky to begin with until you've worn them in a little bit, and equally if you miss a top side on a ledge, then it's very unforgiving and you're kind of just going to go flying. But once you've worn them in, had no problems with either top sides or cess slides, and been really impressed with the way that the sole plate performs. In terms of that overlap that I mentioned earlier, something to bear in mind and something I subsequently found out is that because I'd ordered a wider shell, that this came with the XL sole plate, whereas on a standard UK 9.5 it would come with the large sole plate. So there would be a little bit less of an overlap than I have on my current skate. In terms of the backslide plate or Royale groove, there is a kind of quite shallow pre-cut groove into the sole plate. I was initially a little bit concerned that I was going to have trouble kind of keeping securely locked in on groove tricks, but actually I was surprised that it did stick into the groove quite nicely, and I think this would just kind of continue to be enhanced as I skate a little bit more street and wear my groove in a little bit deeper. So let's go through some pros and some cons now before deciding who this boot is best suited to. So let's go for the pros first. So this is a really high quality handmade skate made out of high-end materials. It's lightweight and leaves you feeling agile and nimble with accurate foot placement. It's also exceptionally comfortable, and the liner feels really hard wearing and breathable too. And finally, once you get used to the way that this skate flexes, if you like a higher rigid cuff, then I think this is something you're going to really enjoy in terms of the really kind of stable flex and how secure that your foot therefore feels within the skate. And now for the cons. So the kind of most obvious con with this skate is that it is extremely expensive at €400. But I feel that this expense is justified. As I've said, it's made from these really high quality, high-end materials, and it is also handmade, so I think that does justify the price tag, and it does of course overall perform really well. I did also experience some minor issues in terms of the lacing kind of slackening off throughout the session, and also with a bit of the stitching coming unpicked as well. There is also the quite thin shock absorber, which leaves you initially feeling like shock is taken quite hard through the legs and the heels. Who is this skate for? So I think that this boot is best suited for an intermediate to advanced skater who's looking for something high performance, high quality and handmade, that's kind of unique and also that feels very different to a traditional hard boot. I think it's also for those who prefer a higher and more rigid cuff, and those who want to own something that has really good high level of attention to detail. So if that sounds like you, then I think this skate is highly likely to be really well suited to you. So who would I not recommend this skate for? Well, I wouldn't recommend this skate to beginners, and the reason for that is that it's quite kind of unique in the way that it performs, and I think that the kind of more advanced features would potentially just be a distraction from mastering the basics. So I think something a little bit more affordable and a little bit more generic will be more suited to beginners. I mean, sure, you could learn on this skate, but I just think that it's better suited to the more intermediate to advanced skater. So let's conclude. Is this skate worth the €400 price tag, or is your money better invested in a traditional hard boot? Well, for me anyway, I think that this skate is definitely worth the money. I personally won't be going back to skating a hard boot anytime soon. I just really like the lightweight of the lightness of this boot, the low volume, the way that it sort of locks around your foot, feels really secure and leaves you feeling kind of agile and nimble on the skate. It's done everything that I was hoping that it would, and it's been exceptionally comfortable with the adaptations that Adapt have made for me. So if you're the kind of person that I described above, I would have absolutely no hesitation in recommending the Adapt Brutale as your next aggressive skate. So I hope you've enjoyed this review and got some value from it. If you did, I'd be really grateful if you could hit the like button. And also, if you're enjoying the content on this channel, be sure to hit subscribe for more videos just like this one. I'm Chris Chadwick of Keep Rolling. Thanks for watching. See you next time.